I used to think marriage was about trust, about love, laughter, the unspoken understanding that two people could face anything together. For 23 years, I believed that about my marriage to Laura. We met in our 20s. She was this radiant woman with fire in her eyes and confidence that could fill a room. I was quieter, steadier, a man who found peace in small routines. She made me feel alive, and I made her feel safe. At least that's what I thought. We built a life that looked perfect from the outside. A suburban home with a white porch, 2 kids, Evan and Chloe, and a golden retriever named Max. Neighbors waved when we drove by. Our friends envied our perfect relationship. Even our kids' teachers used to comment on how we always came to school events together, hand in hand. But perfection has a way of hiding the cracks. It started small. Laura began staying late at work. Deadlines, she said. Team meetings. Sometimes she'd come home smelling like perfume that wasn't hers, or mine. Other nights, her phone would light up at midnight with messages she'd quickly flip face down. I wanted to believe her. I really did. We'd been through so much: mortgages, layoffs, sleepless nights with newborns. I told myself I was being paranoid, but then I noticed her laughter changing. It wasn't the same laugh I knew, the soft, warm kind that filled our kitchen. It was lighter, younger, like the version of herself I met decades ago. One night, I came home early from a business trip. The house was dark except for the faint glow coming from the backyard. I stepped outside, expecting to see Laura reading by the patio lights. Instead, I heard her whispering, softly, intimately. I froze by the door. "Don't worry, he has no idea," she said, her voice low. Then came a quiet laugh, the same one I hadn't heard in years. My heart started hammering in my chest. I couldn't see who she was talking to, but when I stepped closer, I saw her phone screen light up and the name Daniel flashed on it. Daniel, her coworker, the one who always texted about project updates. I didn't confront her that night. I couldn't. Instead, I went inside, sat in my office, and stared at the family photo on my desk. My wife, my children, our smiles, frozen in time before the lies started. That's when I decided to find out the truth. The next morning, I drove to an electronics store and bought a set of small, motion-activated cameras, ones designed for home security. But I didn't install them in the open. I placed them where she'd never think to look. One in the living room, tucked behind the bookshelf. Another in the kitchen, disguised inside the air vent. A third outside, facing the back patio. I synced all of them to my private cloud. Only I had access. For a few days, nothing happened. She kissed me goodbye, texted during lunch, and called before bed. But every night, she stayed late at work. Every night, the cameras showed her coming home after midnight, alone, always tiptoeing, always with a smile that didn't belong to me anymore. Then came the video that shattered everything. It was a Friday night. I was away on another trip, or so she thought. Around 8:45 p.m., she entered the house with someone. A man, Daniel. I watched the footage in silence as they laughed, drank wine, and kissed, right there in the kitchen I had remodeled for her last year. They sat on the counter I had built with my own hands. That night, something in me broke. Not from rage, but from clarity. I didn't shout. I didn't confront. I planned. For the next 3 months, I gathered everything: texts, videos, photos. I created a timeline of her business trips and her overtime shifts. I hired a private investigator just to confirm what I already knew. He found everything: the hotel stays, the weekend getaways, even the fake receipts she used to cover her tracks. But what Laura didn't know was that I wasn't just documenting her affair. I was documenting our finances, too. Our joint account, her secret credit cards, the new life she was trying to build without me, slowly siphoning money to a separate account under her maiden name. The same week, I discovered that I also found something else. She had applied for a new house mortgage with Daniel. They were planning to move in together, while still married to me. It would have been easy to explode right then, to storm into her office, throw the evidence on her desk, and demand answers. But after 23 years, I realized something. She wanted that reaction. She wanted chaos. Instead, I stayed silent. calm, watching, waiting. I acted like the same husband I'd always been, made her coffee, laughed at her small talk, held her hand at church. All the while, I was preparing the final act. By the time she noticed anything wrong, it would already be too late. Because when
Like, subscribe, and share with your friends who related to it. Comment below for next story.
she thought I was gone on another business trip, I wasn't. I was home, and I was watching the whole time. One night, around 10:15 p.m., she came home with Daniel again. They walked into the kitchen, same as always. But this time, I was sitting in the dark living room, watching the monitor in real time from my phone. Every laugh, every touch, it was all being recorded, broadcast to a cloud server she didn't know existed. And while they celebrated their little secret, I smiled. Because I had already transferred our house title into my name only, closed her access to the joint accounts, and prepared divorce papers citing infidelity with supporting evidence. I wasn't just watching anymore. I was waiting for her to fall. That was the night I made the call to my lawyer. The next morning, Laura woke up to frozen accounts, a locked house, and a husband who had disappeared from her life completely. The woman who thought I'd never find out had finally learned that I'd been watching all along. And I was just getting started. The morning after my lawyer call, I sat at the dining table, staring at the cup of coffee I'd made for Laura. Black, 1 sugar, just how she liked it. But she wasn't there to drink it, because at 8 a.m., the locks changed. At 8:15, the joint accounts froze. And at 8:30, my lawyer delivered the divorce notice to her office. It was surgical, clean, precise. 23 years of betrayal undone by 3 sheets of paper and a mountain of evidence. When my phone buzzed at 8:47, I knew it was her. Laura, what is this? My card isn't working. Did the bank mess up? Laura, why can't I get in the house? Where are you? Laura, you're overreacting, Mark. Let's just talk, please. Talk? I almost laughed. For months, I'd begged her to talk. She'd brush me off every time, her voice smooth, distant, rehearsed. Now she wanted to talk. I didn't reply. Instead, I sent one photo, a still from the footage of her and Daniel in our kitchen. Her face froze mid-laugh, the wine glass in her hand. Then I turned my phone off. By the afternoon, the text shifted from confusion to anger. Laura, you had no right to spy on me. Laura, you've gone crazy. Laura, you're ruining everything. Ruining what, I wondered. Her fantasy life with Daniel? Her double existence? No, Laura, I wasn't ruining it. I was exposing it. That night, I went to stay with my friend Ben. He was the kind of guy who didn't ask questions until you were ready to talk. I told him everything over a few beers, and by the end, he just sat there shaking his head. Man, he said quietly, you always said she was your anchor. She was, I replied, until she started sinking the ship. A few days later, the legal storm began. My lawyer, Vanessa, was a force of nature. Calm, composed, ruthless in her efficiency. She had handled a dozen infidelity cases before, but she told me this one was airtight. You've documented everything, she said. Text logs, bank statements, video evidence. There's no room for denial here. Will it ruin her? I asked. Vanessa paused, studying me. Do you want it to? I didn't answer right away. I wasn't sure what I wanted, closure, justice, or simply peace. Maybe all of it. She tried to erase me, I finally said. She built a new life on my dime. I just want her to feel what that's like. Vanessa nodded. Then we'll make sure she does. The fallout came faster than I expected. When Laura realized the accounts were frozen, she panicked. I heard from mutual friends that she'd been calling everyone, crying, screaming, claiming I'd lost my mind. But she didn't know that I had already spoken to those same friends. Quietly, carefully, I had sent them the footage, the screenshots, the messages. Not to shame her, but to make sure no one believed her lies. By the end of the week, she was the one everyone was avoiding. Daniel, the brave coworker, stopped showing up at her office. Word spread that his wife had found out too, and filed for divorce within 48 hours. Laura's perfect affair had turned into ashes, and I was calm. For the first time in months, I slept through the night. 2 weeks later, Laura showed up at my workplace. I was in the middle of a meeting when my assistant buzzed in, her voice uneasy. Mark, your wife is here." "She's not my wife," I said, standing. "Not anymore." When I stepped into the lobby, she was standing there in a beige coat, eyes red, face pale. "Mark, please," she said, her voice trembling. "Can we talk?" "Just 5 minutes." People were staring, so I nodded and led her outside. She took a shaky breath. "You've made your point. I messed up, but you don't have to destroy me." "Destroy you?" I repeated quietly. "Laura, you did that yourself." Her eyes filled with tears. "I wasn't happy, okay? You were always busy, always distant. Daniel, he made me feel seen again." "Right," I said. "So you decided to punish me for not being the man you imagined." She swallowed hard, then whispered, "Can't we fix this?" For a brief second, I almost pitied her. The woman who'd once made my heart race now looked like a stranger begging for scraps of the life she'd thrown away. Then I remembered the videos, the laughter, the lies. "There's nothing to fix," I said. "I just came to return something." I handed her a flash drive, the same one that contained every bit of evidence. "This," I said, "is the truth. For you to remember what you traded 23 years for." She looked down at it like it was a bomb. "Goodbye, Laura." And with that, I walked away. You'd think that would be the end of it, the closure moment where I'd move on, rebuild, maybe even forgive. But betrayal doesn't just end with goodbye. A month later, my lawyer called. "Mark, you should know. Laura's contesting the divorce. She's claiming emotional abuse." I laughed out loud. "She cheated on me. She says she did it because you were controlling, cold, distant." "So now I'm the villain," I muttered. Vanessa sighed. "Don't worry. We'll handle it." But she's desperate. And desperate people do stupid things. She was right. Because a few days later, I noticed something strange. My cloud storage, the one I'd used for all the footage, had a new login attempt. From Laura's email. She was trying to access it. I smiled to myself. I'd been expecting that. Because weeks earlier, I'd created a second folder. One filled with carefully edited clips that told a slightly different story. A story where she looked even worse. I wasn't going to post them, of course, but I knew she'd find them. And when she did, she finally realized what it felt like to lose control of her own narrative. She thought she could rewrite history. I just gave her a front row seat to her own downfall. By the time the court date came, she was a mess, pale, jittery, barely able to meet my eyes. The judge reviewed the evidence, the financial records, the witness statements. It was over in less than 30 minutes. Laura got nothing. No house, no savings, no spousal support. The judge's exact words, "Mrs. Reynolds, the court finds sufficient evidence of marital misconduct and deception. Your husband acted within his rights." I didn't celebrate. I just sat there quietly, watching as she broke down in front of everyone. The same woman who once thought she could manipulate every emotion in the room. That's when I realized something. My revenge wasn't about humiliation. It was about clarity. For years, she thought she could hide behind charm and excuses. But now, she had to live in the truth every single day. And me, I was finally free. That night, I returned home to silence. No accusations, no lies, no fake laughter. Just quiet. I poured a drink, sat by the window, and looked at the empty driveway. Max, our old retriever, rested his head on my knee, sighing softly. "You knew before I did, didn't you, boy?" I whispered. He wagged his tail once, like an answer. I smiled. For the first time, it felt like peace wasn't just possible. It was already here. But little did I know, Laura wasn't done yet. Because revenge, as I learned, doesn't end when you win. It ends when they finally admit defeat. And Laura, she was about to make one last desperate move that would test everything I'd built. 3 months passed after the court ruling. I thought it was over. Laura had vanished from my life, her number blocked, her name removed from every legal document. I'd begun repairing the pieces she'd shattered, emotionally, financially, even spiritually. But betrayal leaves ghosts. They live in the quiet hours, when the coffee brews but no one's there to drink it, when an empty chair catches your eye, when you scroll through photos and wonder how someone who smiled that wide could lie that deeply. I was healing, but she still haunted me. Until one night, she came roaring back into my world, not in person, but through chaos. It started with a phone call from my sister, Jenna. "Mark, are you okay?" she asked breathlessly. I frowned. "Yeah, why? You haven't seen Facebook?" "No, why?" She hesitated, then sighed. "You should sit down." I opened my laptop, logged in, and froze. Laura had posted a long, teary, open letter, the kind that starts with, "I never thought I'd share this." But she painted herself as a broken woman, betrayed by a cold, manipulative husband who'd spied on her for years, isolated her from her friends, and used technology to control her every move. It was filled with half-truths and full lies. And she tagged me. The comments were a flood of sympathy. Old acquaintances, mutual friends, co-workers, all comforting her, saying, "You're so strong, he doesn't deserve you. Men like that never change." She turned the story upside down, and she knew exactly how to twist the knife because she was a master manipulator. For 20 years, she'd made everyone believe we were the perfect couple. And now she was using that same skill to destroy what was left of my reputation. I stared at the screen, anger surging in my chest. But I didn't type a single word, because I knew something she didn't. I still had the real footage, the unedited videos, the timestamps, the voice recordings. And this time, I wasn't just watching. I was planning. The next day, I went to my lawyer, Vanessa. "She's defaming you publicly," Vanessa said, scrolling through the screenshots. "This could be considered harassment and libel. Can we sue her?" I asked. Vanessa nodded. "We can, but it might be smarter to let her keep talking." I frowned. "Why?" "Because the more she talks, the more evidence we collect. And when we drop the truth, no one will doubt you." It was sound advice, but waiting wasn't easy. Every day, new posts appeared. Laura playing the victim, spinning tales about how I'd broken her spirit and controlled every dollar. At first, I stayed silent, but soon, mutual friends started messaging me privately. "Mark, is this true? You really had cameras in the house? Why didn't you tell us she was suffering?" The irony was unbearable. She was the one who had betrayed me, yet I was the one defending myself. Still, I kept my mouth shut until she crossed one final line. 2 weeks later, she posted a photo. It was of our old home, my home, with the caption, "This house used to feel like love. Now it's just where I lost myself." She'd driven to the neighborhood and taken that picture from the street. But that wasn't the worst part. In the background, through the front window, you could see movement, my silhouette, standing inside. She'd taken that photo while I was home. Watching me, the chill that ran through me was instant. She wasn't just playing the victim now. She was stalking me. That night, I called Vanessa. "I'm done waiting," I said flatly. "It's time." What came next wasn't impulsive. It was methodical. I gathered every piece of truth. The video of Laura and Daniel in our kitchen, the text between them, the financial statements, show her secret transfers, the voice messages where she bragged to a friend about keeping me in the dark. I didn't post it online. That wasn't my style. Instead, I sent it privately to every person she had manipulated. Family, friends, her boss, her colleagues. No captions, no explanations, just the truth, raw and undeniable. Within 24 hours, the whispers started. Her Facebook went quiet. The open letters disappeared. Her defenders stopped commenting. And by the end of the week, Laura deleted her account altogether. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt empty, because revenge doesn't feel like victory. It feels like balance being restored, but at a cost. A month later, I got an email. It was from Daniel's wife, Melissa, the woman who'd been betrayed just like me. "Hi, Mark. I know we don't know each other, but I wanted to thank you. Because of you, I found the courage to leave him. I saw the videos too. I'm finally free." Her words hit me deeper than I expected. Freedom. That's all either of us had wanted. For years, Laura and Daniel had taken our peace, our faith, our trust, and now we were both learning how to live without them. Then one evening, out of nowhere, I got another message. This one from Laura. "You won. I lost everything. Are you happy now? I stared at it for a long time before replying. No, Laura. I'm not happy. I'm just done. She didn't respond. But a few days later, I heard from a mutual friend that she'd moved out of state. Small town, new job, trying to start fresh. And honestly, I hoped she did. Because the thing about revenge is that it doesn't fix what was broken. It just ensures that the person who broke it finally feels the weight of it. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just free. 3 months later, I was sitting at a cafe downtown when I saw something strange. A woman about Laura's age, wearing a scarf that looked exactly like one I'd bought her years ago. She sat at a corner table, reading a book. For a second, my heart jumped, but it wasn't her. Still, that moment made me realize something. I didn't hate her anymore. Because the truth was, I'd already moved on emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. And she'd have to live knowing I saw everything she thought she could hide. Sometimes late at night, I rewatch the old footage, not to relive it, but to remind myself how far I've come. The camera doesn't lie, but it also doesn't heal. That's something only time can do. And as the years passed, I learned something else. Forgiveness doesn't mean letting them back in. It just means freeing yourself from the weight of their betrayal. Laura taught me that, the hard way. But life, as always, had one final twist to offer. 6 months later, I got a call from an unknown number. Mr. Reynolds, a woman's voice said. This is Officer Lewis from the County Police Department. Are you familiar with a Ms. Laura Reynolds? My stomach dropped. Yes, I said slowly. Why? She was involved in an accident last night. She's stable, but she listed you as her emergency contact. For a long moment, I said nothing. Emergency contact. After everything she'd done, I was still the name she thought of when things went wrong. That's the thing about love and betrayal. Even after the final betrayal, a part of you still exists in their story. I went to the hospital. Not out of love, not out of duty, just closure. When I walked in, she was lying in bed, bruised, tired, her hair cut short. She looked up, eyes wide. You came. I did, I said quietly. We sat in silence for a long time. Then she whispered, I thought you hated me. I did, I said. For a while. But hate's just another way of staying tied to someone. She looked away, tears forming. I really messed everything up, didn't I? I didn't answer. She already knew. As I left, she whispered something faint but clear. Thank you for still caring enough to come. And for the first time in years, I walked away with no anger left inside me. Because revenge ends when peace begins. And I'd finally reached mine. After Sarah left, the house felt like an empty museum. Every room haunted by what used to be. The kitchen smelled like her favorite coffee blend. The bed still had a dent where she used to sleep. But there was no warmth, just silence. For days, I wandered, half expecting her to walk in and say, it was a mistake, Mike. But she never did. And deep down, I knew she never would. What she didn't know, though, was that I had everything recorded. Every word, every meeting, every betrayal. And I wasn't done yet. The investigator I'd hired, Mr. Jenkins, had gone above and beyond. Not only had he gathered video proof of Sarah and David's affair, he'd also discovered something else. Something far worse. Sarah and David had been transferring money from my construction business account into a shell company, a fake design firm that Sarah had set up 6 months ago. Over $48,000 was gone. That was the line. The cheating was personal, but this was criminal. I met Jenkins at a coffee shop, the kind of quiet place where no one looks twice at two men talking over a laptop. He slid a USB drive across the table. Everything's in there, he said. Emails, invoices, transfers, the works. Enough to take them down? I asked. He nodded. More than enough. When I got home, I plugged the drive in. Watching their deceit unfold in cold, time-stamped evidence, it made my blood boil. The fake invoices, the shared credit card bills, the transfers to an offshore account with Sarah's maiden name. Every click of the mouse revealed another betrayal. But I wasn't going to storm in and confront them this time. No yelling, no crying, no begging. I'd done that already. This time, I wanted to make sure when I hit back, they wouldn't get up again. I spent days gathering my own evidence. Bank statements, contract copies, tax filings. I contacted my lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Elaine Porter, who'd helped me with business disputes before. When I showed her everything, she looked stunned. Mike, this is fraud. And depending on how much they moved, possibly money laundering, we can build a case. That was music to my ears. Meanwhile, Sarah still thought I was broken and oblivious. She sent a few texts pretending to check on me, probably to make herself look like the bigger person. Sarah, I hope you're doing okay. I never wanted to hurt you. Sarah, maybe one day you'll understand that we just grew apart. Me, sure. Whatever you need to tell yourself. She didn't know I was watching her and David's new apartment through my investigator's live access to the building's security feed. Every week, he sent me short video updates, them laughing, eating, decorating the place I helped pay for. It should have hurt. But instead, I felt a kind of cold satisfaction, because I knew what was coming. A month later, I filed both a civil and criminal case against Sarah and David for fraud and embezzlement. Elaine handled everything meticulously, no emotion, no hesitation. We served them court papers right at their doorstep. Jenkins captured the moment on camera, Sarah in her bathrobe, David shirtless, both of them shocked as the officer said, "Sarah Walker, you've been served." That image became my closure. But karma, as always, had perfect timing. Turns out, David wasn't just cheating with Sarah. He'd been embezzling from his own firm, too. Once the authorities dug into their accounts, the mess spread like wildfire. His company suspended him immediately. Sarah's world began to crumble. The fake design business was exposed as part of the fraud. The IRS got involved. Her bank froze her accounts. I sat in court calm and composed, watching her stammer and cry to the judge, claiming she didn't know. Elaine leaned over and whispered, "You're doing great. Don't react." Inside, though, my heart was pounding, not from anger, but from victory. By the time the case wrapped up, Sarah had lost everything. The court ordered her to repay the stolen funds, plus damages. David was indicted on separate charges for tax evasion. They sold their apartment. Her car got repossessed, and she had to move back in with her parents. Every headline that came out about David's scandal made me smirk. But my revenge wasn't just about money or exposure. It was about peace, real peace. Months passed. I rebuilt my business and focused on myself. Therapy helped more than I'd expected. One night, while I was closing up the shop, I saw a familiar figure standing outside. Sarah. She looked nothing like the woman I'd once loved. Pale, thinner, eyes hollow. She clutched a letter in her hand. "Mike," she said softly. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry." I crossed my arms. "You're sorry because you lost. Not because you regret it." Tears welled up. "I made a mistake. I thought I loved him." "Yeah," I said coldly. "And you thought I'd never find out." I turned and walked away before she could say another word. That was the last time I saw her. Years later, I heard through a mutual friend that she had moved to another state, working odd jobs, struggling to stay afloat. David apparently left her when things got bad. Sometimes I wonder if she ever thinks about what she threw away. I gave her everything: loyalty, stability, love. She traded it all for a thrill and a con artist. And me, I learned to rebuild, stronger. A few weeks ago, I was at a diner when I saw a young couple sitting across from me, laughing, teasing each other, the way Sarah and I used to. For a moment, that old ache came back. But then I smiled, because now I knew I didn't lose her. She lost me. And the best part? I'd been watching the whole time, not to hurt her, but to make sure karma did its job. And it did. 2 years had passed since the court hearings, the sleepless nights, the rage, and the quiet mornings that felt like starting life from zero. I'd moved to a smaller town, bought a workshop by the lake, and poured myself into carpentry, something I'd loved as a kid, but abandoned for business. Every morning, I'd open the shop, breathe in the smell of sawdust and pine, and think, this is peace. Not revenge, not bitterness, just peace. But peace has a way of being tested. Because one cold November evening, as I was locking up, I saw her again, Sarah. She stood by the sidewalk, holding her coat tight, her eyes sunken but familiar. For a second, I thought I was imagining it. Then she said my name, Mike. It was the same voice that used to tell me I love you before sleep, but now it was shaky, fragile, the sound of someone who'd lost everything. I drove 3 hours to find you, she said. Please, can we talk? I didn't answer. I just looked at her, the way you look at an old wound you thought had healed. 5 minutes, I finally said. Then you leave. Inside the workshop, I poured 2 cups of coffee out of habit, not kindness. She sat quietly, her fingers trembling against the mug. You look different, she said softly. Older, but calmer. Working with wood'll do that to you, I said flatly. What do you want, Sarah? Her eyes filled with tears. I wanted to apologize, properly this time. Not the half-hearted text, not the courtroom scene. A real apology. I stayed silent. I lost everything, she said, her voice breaking. My job, my savings, my home. David's gone. He ran when things got bad. I've been living with my sister, trying to find steady work. I didn't move. Not a word. Then she said the one thing that caught my breath. I know I can't undo what I did, but I wanted you to know. I think about it every single day. About how I destroyed someone who loved me most. Her voice cracked. You were the best thing that ever happened to me, Mike. And I ruined it because I wanted excitement, something new. I was stupid, greedy. I hurt the only person who actually cared. She looked up at me then, truly looked, and for the first time, I didn't see the manipulative woman who broke me. I saw someone who'd been punished enough. Do you hate me? She asked. I sipped my coffee. I did, for a long time. But hate gets heavy after a while. I had to let it go. So you forgive me? I took a long breath. Forgiving doesn't mean forgetting. It means I don't let you live rent-free in my head anymore. She nodded slowly, tears streaming down her face. That's fair. We sat in silence for a while. The only sound was the ticking of the clock on the wall. Then she said something I didn't expect. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't found out? I smiled faintly. Yeah, I'd still be living a lie. And you'd still be pretending. That's the worst part, she whispered. I thought you'd never find out. But part of me wanted you to. I couldn't carry the guilt anymore. So you let me walk around thinking I was crazy, I said. You let me believe I was paranoid. I know. I deserve everything that happened to me, she said quietly. I just wanted to say, I hope you found peace. And that was it. She stood up, wiped her tears, and walked toward the door. Before she left, she turned around and said, You always told me karma doesn't need help. I guess you were right. I didn't reply. I just watched her walk into the night, smaller, broken, and finally human again. When the door closed behind her, I felt something shift inside me. Not triumph, not sadness, just closure. Months passed again. Life went on. I never saw her after that night. But one morning, I got a letter, no return address, just my name in familiar handwriting. Inside was a single piece of paper. I've been sober for 6 months now. Got a steady job at a bakery. I'm taking care of my parents. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted to thank you, not for what you did, but for not destroying me completely. I guess that's the real difference between you and me. Sarah. I folded the letter, placed it in the drawer, and went to work. That day, I carved a new sign for my shop, the Watching Wood Shop, because every piece has a story. It was a quiet nod to the truth, that sometimes seeing the whole picture doesn't mean acting on rage. Sometimes, the greatest revenge isn't exposure or destruction. It's moving on while they drown in the weight of their choices. Later that year, I met someone new, Claire, a writer who came in one afternoon to order a handmade table. We talked for hours about art, rebuilding, and how people can break and heal all the same. There was no rush, no fireworks, just honesty. When she asked if I'd ever been married, I said once. But it taught me everything I needed to know about what I won't tolerate. She smiled. Sounds like you learned the hard way. Yeah, I said, but it stuck. One night, as I closed the shop, I looked at the reflection in the window. Older, calmer, wiser. I realized the man I'd become wasn't born from love or betrayal, but from endurance. Sarah thought I'd never find out. But I had been watching, not just her, but myself. Watching how far I could fall. Watching how far I could rise. And maybe that's the real secret of revenge. You don't destroy them. You outgrow them.
Like, subscribe, and share with your friends who related to it. Comment below for next story.